Hi, everyone. Welcome to Breaking the Chain with Caitlin, a digital story vodcast. Each episode, we explore unique roles of various healthcare workers relating to infection prevention and control practices. I'm your host, Caitlin Cosgrove, and today we'll be talking about the role of food services in the healthcare system. Now it's time to welcome our guest, Kendra Allen, who will speak more about the importance of hand hygiene and infection control practices in food services. So, hi, Kendra, welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Caitlin. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be doing this. So, as Caitlin said, my name is Kendra Allen. I'm a full-time faculty in Nutrition and Food Service Management program at Centennial College. Now, before I did that, I worked in quality assurance in food manufacturing, as well as in long-term care and acute care in nutrition and food services in various management and non-management roles.
Wow, that's so cool. So I guess we can get started. What is the role of food services in the healthcare system? And maybe you can touch on to infection prevention and control practices.
Okay, well, I know a lot of people are not familiar with what happens in food services. They know that there's food, definitely. So just an overall kind of food services takes care of, let's say, receiving, storing, prepping, cooking, serving, and any kind of disposal of food in healthcare. We'll stick primarily to that long-term care as well as acute care, and as well as ensuring, again, just safe food to the clients, residents, patients, and as well as staff. Often food services is also responsible for the cafeteria, for supplying food as well to the gift shops, as well as at times even helping with the retail food services as well as catering. So food services really does, they feed the healthcare environment in total. Now, as far as the hand hygiene part about it or relation to infection prevention and control practices, we do take that really serious, and as most of you may or may not have thought, food services is one of the departments that has many of their staff that are either in direct or direct contact with, again, patients, residents, as well as all the other healthcare team members. So hand hygiene and infection prevention and control practices is a really big part of training and steps in the daily routines and staff task of the staff. And many healthcare facilities, again, so not only provide the meals and snacks, but they're everywhere. So we do try to make sure that our staff are, properly trained and that they know what they need to do. And I think as we go on and talk, and Caitlin has more questions, I'll be able to get a little bit more into that.
Wow, thank you for sharing. I guess a lot of people don't understand really what the role of food services is because we don't see behind the scenes. We just grab our food and go, but we don't actually see, like you mentioned, receiving, storing, prepping, disposal. We just see, oh, here's your food. So it's nice to know too that all the steps are involved, and also too the important, because there's so many steps and because you're catering to so many different people, that infection prevention and control practices are especially important since you have access to so many people. So on that note, what steps should you take to ensure a clean environment during food preparation and to prevent food-related outbreaks?
So I'll go back a little bit. So what happens, so in food services too, all the staff, whether they're food service workers, whether they're supervisors, or whether they're management, all have actually had to complete either municipal, provincial, or federal safe food handling certification courses. So that's to start with that. In general, so then staff are trained through the courses how to keep food safe, and a lot of that has to do with hand hygiene. Even like, we make sure that the food is cooked to proper temperatures, it's stored properly. But if our staff do not do proper hand hygiene, none of that matters. So it's really, really important. So when I say, so staff, before they even start their shift, they need to wash their hands. Anytime they change from one task to another task, they need to wash their hands. Anytime they've been doing even the same task, even if it's making salads for more than usually 2 hours, they're told they need to wash their hands again. Before they go on a break, they need to wash their hands. When they come back from a break, they need to wash their hands. And we even have our staff ensure when they end their shift, they need to wash their hands again, just making sure they don't take anything perhaps from the kitchen into the outside environment. So it's really a huge part of keeping the food and said the staff, residents, customers safe. As far as the preparation part of it, making sure that the environment is safe as well as the food is safe, all surfaces within food services are also cleaned regularly with food safe sanitizer. Not only just the dishes and utensils or the tools that the staff use, again, through prepping and cooking and serving the food, but everything as simple as any counters that are used, cutting boards that are used, everything that is used is sanitized with food safe sanitizer. So again, from start to beginning, we make sure that the staff are washing their hands and everything that's going to come in contact with the food or even in the area are properly sanitized.
Mhm. Wow, there are so many points of consideration for hand hygiene that you don't think. You just think, oh, I have to wash my hands before doing a task, but you don't think, okay, I have to also wash my hands before I leave, before I go on a break. After, you said 2 hours after making salad, wash your hands. And also, too, you mentioned all the surfaces that need to be cleaned as well, like the cutting boards, the counters. So hand hygiene and infection control practices is like the forefront for me when I hear these stories. And do you have could you share a specific story about when hand hygiene was not performed and what happened as a result? Is there anything?
It's not something that happens often.
Mhm.
Now, I know sometimes we get staff where, and I think with any job, you're in a rush and the things that you really do automatically, slips out of your mind. But
Yeah.
this is a piece where in food services really, and I think with any kind of any department, there are certain things where you let them go every once in a while. Hand hygiene in food services is not one of those things. That is a stop, go back, wash your hands. And in most departments too, we have our hand wash sinks are located at the entrances and exits of the department. So you should not be able to even walk into food services or into the main kitchen without passing a sink. You can't leave food services or any part of the kitchen without passing a sink. And that's why we set it up so that there's no excuse. They can't say, well, we forgot because we didn't see it. It's always right there. So only kind of stories I can give to say is that you have a staff where, and it's often going to be sometimes anything either new staff or staff who's been there a long time,
Hmm.
where they've just kind of gotten to this routine and sometimes forget, things that they're supposed to do, or they remember, I know my job and they're thinking I'm being safe anyways.
Hmm.
But really what happens if we see staff, you walk past the sink or you've been doing a task too long, we remind them, we tell them, you know what, remember, you need to make sure wash your hands and you need to do that now. It's not going to be a later thing. We do have little things come up where sometimes you get staff who they'll wear gloves. And I know with nurses too, that wearing gloves, sometimes you do that and you kind of forget the gloves aren't just to protect the patient or the client or the resident, right? And we sometimes forget too, because we're wearing gloves, we maybe don't notice as much what we've touched
Hmm.
because we're thinking we've got the gloves safe. So in a lot of food services, really, gloves is not something that is actually recommended
Mm.
unless we have a staff member that if they have an injury to their hand, we make sure that it is covered and that, it's got bandages, whatever it needs to be, and then gloves go on top. But usually we try to stay away from gloves, not even just because of the expense, but because sometimes you forget, you don't notice always what you're touching or that your hands are not as clean as they should be because you're wearing gloves. So I really don't have a lot of stories where, hand hygiene is not done because it is so, so important in food services.
Yeah, and like you mentioned too, you have the visual cues which are helpful. You have like the hand sanitizers that I know I've seen at the hospital are all around.
Yeah.
So that's a reminder. But it is true because, when you put gloves, you are just thinking about, oh, I'm safe, but you don't think about where you touch. And I definitely could see like it's probably really common for people to be on that autopilot mode
Yes.
where I've done it so many times, it's just routine, but I'm not thinking. So I guess a lot of students like myself would be wondering, what are key strategies or techniques that you can share with us students to ensure that we maintain effective hand hygiene?
One really important thing I think is to just always think that I'm touching, whether it's certain food services, it could be I'm touching food that is being served to someone else. I try to get my students to think about yourself too. When you see someone preparing food, and this is part of too when they have our food labs in our program, of some students who they want to spend time making it look pretty. And I say, okay, that's great, but if you saw someone touching your food that much, even if they had clean hands and gloves, do you like that? Most of them are like, no. Most people don't like to see other people touching their food, right? So
Right.
to with it, think of yourself as the person who you're preparing the food for, and if they're seeing you prepare the food, always imagine you're being watched by the people who are going to consume the food. And that's
Mhm.
something my students so that they think about that because they often forget that. We've seen that. So really, so some strategies again, think that you're always being watched. And it kind of sounds, oh no, like Big Brother, but
Mhm.
often we're not going to go into the autopilot if we're thinking, okay, somebody's watching me. Think about, am I doing, my job to the best of my ability? And in food services, often that is simply, are my hands clean? Are the utensils I'm using clean? Are the surfaces that I'm using clean? Right? So think about that. And also when it comes to hand washing, we train them. And I think training in any field is really the important thing. Repetitive training, reminders. And I'm sure most of you have seen, the hand washing posters,
Yep.
we have them usually at all sinks. We know this stuff, no, but when you look at the sink and the sign is right there in front of you, it's kind of hard to say, well, I didn't see that, right? And that's kind of a big strategy for that. And then for those who are in management, I say make sure your staff has what they need. Whether that becomes part of a particular job outline where they make sure that there's paper towels or that there's soap or that there is somewhere for there to put their dirty paper towels once they've washed their hands, making sure that the hand sanitizer is actually there. There's almost nothing worse, especially nowadays, when you're trying to be safe, you go to use a hand sanitizer and it just makes a funny noise and nothing comes out. And you're thinking, I'm really trying, and you're doing your best, and there's nothing, at that point, now you're like, okay, now what do I do? So really it is a team effort from, the frontline staff to their management. Just make sure everyone has what they need, make sure training is done regularly, and also speak up if you see something. Even if it's your coworker, if you're not comfortable telling them, you need to let someone else know because if your hands are not clean, then that can affect so many people.
Mhm. Wow, thank you so much. So many great points. I really like though the team effort. That I know a lot of people think, oh, if I do it, no, everyone has to be on the same page. And I find, especially too, as students, sometimes we're afraid to speak up.
Yeah.
But as you know, if it just takes one person and then right? So we all have to think about the importance of all the different points of consideration of hand hygiene. And I really like what you said about kind of asking yourself, stopping and saying, am I doing the best of my ability?
Mhm.
And looking at it from a holistic perspective, it's the utensils, it's the counters, it's making sure that you use proper hand hygiene, and just, I guess, practicing and doing the training and learning from it. So we've reached the end of this episode of Breaking the Chain with Caitlin. Thank you to our guest, Kendra, for sharing your experiences with food services in relation to infection prevention control practices. And thank you for the listeners for tuning in. Until next time.